Ready to start the carnivore diet, but you're not quite sure where to begin? In this beginner's guide, I'm going to walk you through the exact steps to take to transition into animal-based eating for 30, 60, 90 days or beyond. From grocery lists of what to eat, common benefits, and what to expect, this is your complete roadmap to fat loss, reduced anxiety, better digestion, and knowing that real healing from many chronic issues is possible for you. I'm Jackie Elmer. Grab my guide, including the grocery list that I'll be sharing here at lowertoxiclife.com. Give me a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. So first, let's start with what is carnivore? It's a great question. And there are different variations that go with that. Carnivore essentially is animal-based eating. Now, when I mention different variations, it really depends on your goals, and it also depends on who you listen to. So I'm going to give you a basic breakdown, and then I'll let you decide for yourself what's the best fit for you, what's the best starting place for you, what's the best long-term goal for you. And if you have other ideas of what carnivore is, feel free to incorporate those into what you do. So strict carnivore, as I often hear it referred to, is only ruminant meat, okay? Only ruminant meat. Beef, lamb, bison, goat, venison, salt, and water. This is also called the lion diet, and it was popularized by Michaela Peterson and then Jordan and Tammy Peterson, her parents. And she's got quite the health journey, and you can Google all of them to learn more about the issues that they were dealing with and how they used this diet to heal themselves. Now, a less strict form of carnivore is adding in eggs, seafood, poultry, pork, and other meats, including canned sardines, possibly canned tuna. There's a lot of debate out there about mercury, so be very careful and read your labels. Butter, some dairy, if dairy is tolerated by you. And then a more flexible form of carnivore and still animal-based eating may include coffee, seasonings, and rarely, but sometimes, honey, okay? So I tend to think of carnivore like a spectrum, from strict elimination to a more relaxed, sustainable lifestyle. The bottom line is you want to start where you are, start with your goals and what your primary driving why is. And then a big question that's often asked is, how is carnivore different from keto, ketovore, paleo, and animal-based eating? And so I'm just going to kind of give you some quick descriptions on that. And none of these are carved in stone. I kind of operate from a loosey-goosey perspective of you do you. I don't know what your goals are. I don't know what your chronic issues are. So you have to figure out by testing and trying what's going to work for you. So keto is typically low carb, but it does include plant foods. So it does include some vegetables and fruits, seeds, and nuts. Paleo is no processed food or grains, no processed food or grains, but it does include plants. So vegetables, fruits, seeds, and nuts. And then animal-based, it has a carnivore foundation, and as I mentioned, potentially some fruit and honey. And this really comes from the philosophy of ancient ancestral eating. Our ancient ancestors might have seen blueberries growing on the vine and picked some and tested them and ate them. They might have cracked open a few nuts or a coconut or something along those lines. So again, I'm going to recommend that you determine what your goals are, what chronic issues you are dealing with, and then you have to test and try and really pay attention to the signals and cues that your own body is giving you to decide what's going to work for you. So animal-based isn't just keto with meat. It's truly about removing plant toxins and focusing on nutrient density. So the first thing that we're going to start you with in this beginner journey is your why. I know we hear that all the time, but your why and your motivation are pivotal to whether you're going to be successful or not. Maybe your goal, and a lot of people come to this looking to lose stubborn weight. They've tried every other diet, every other fad. They've just gone down so many roads. They've just, done yo-yo dieting. They've had yo-yo weights up and down. Some people have even, had parts of their body removed. They've gone through gastric bypass, lap band surgery, a lot of different things, and yet still they're struggling with weight. So maybe losing stubborn weight is your goal. Well, I'm going to give you another one to really think about. And I'm going to share with you why I think paying attention to breaking sugar and carb addictions often is more important than losing the stubborn weight. Because we can lose weight, but if we don't break that sugar carb addiction, often the weight comes right back on. Maybe your goal is to reverse chronic inflammation and autoimmune issues, reduce anxiety and brain fog, reset your digestion, and start accomplishing better sleep. Maybe it's just to reconnect to ancestral whole food living. Now, watch my interview here with Bruce Langworthy, who lost 235 pounds, and he shares his idea that weight loss was a big part of his goal, but he started most specifically with that goal of breaking the sugar carb addiction. Because as he states, do this and the weight loss will follow. We have to get rid of that, nagging food thought that goes on, that constant thinking of eating this or eating that. Because really and truly, your why is everything. So that's why it's so important to write it down, put it on a couple sticky notes, put those on the refrigerator, put them on your pantry, your cupboards, wherever it will matter for you, that you will see that to remind you that this isn't just a food change, it's a transformation. All right, so how do we get started? We're going to talk about prepping and the grocery list. And as I mentioned, this grocery list is provided in my guide at lowertoxiclife.com. Grab it, print it off, and take it to the grocery store. And I think you'll love it because it's so simple. The beauty is you only need a very short time in the grocery store. We talk about freedom on a way of eating like this. It gives us time freedom, gives us food freedom, gives us shopping freedom, because you're only going to visit a few departments: meat and seafood, eggs and dairy, possibly canned meats, and the frozen section. So the basic grocery list includes ground beef, steaks and roasts, pasture-raised eggs, butter, ghee, beef tallow, lamb, bison, organ meats, think liver, heart, anything that you can see yourself eating, sardines, salmon, shrimp, sea salt, electrolyte mix, and then optional are dairy and preferably raw dairy, including full-fat yogurt, cheeses, cottage cheese, and kefir. I've recently discovered a raw milk kefir that my local Sprouts carries that is out of this world. I could practically drink the whole container. Although I don't, I limit myself to 8 ounces, and I only do that once a day. But one thing I really want to tell you is pay attention to the labels, and I'll get to that, but pay attention to the labels on your dairy as well. Coffee, collagen, honey, and bone broth are 4 other optional items that you might choose to incorporate into your carnivore animal-based way of eating. And I say might because coffee doesn't agree with everyone. Collagen can break down as a high oxalate food, which can cause issues. Honey, for a lot of people, is going to keep those carb and sugar addictions going because there's something about that sweet taste on the tongue that affects us, and we often can't stop at just a little teaspoon added in with our plain yogurt or something like that. And then bone broth, I do highly recommend, but again, that's me personally. If you're not going to make it yourself, again, I highly recommend that you read labels carefully. You want to read labels carefully to avoid those added sugars, those hidden sugars, those spices that could trigger some different things within you. I know I'm super sensitive to black pepper, turmeric, cinnamon. There's some spices that I've had to alleviate as I work to overcome my own toxic overload of oxalates and eating too many of these superfoods. There's also often a lot of extra processed additives that could derail your efforts, not only to heal your chronic issues, to curb those sugar and carb addictions, but also for weight and fat loss. All right, so let's talk about some prep tips as you begin this journey as carnivore animal-based eating. First of all, clean out your pantry. Just get rid of everything that's tempting. Don't even allow yourself to go there. I have a video right here on sunk cost, and it's why we hold on to certain things. And as I've shared in my carnivore journey in my 11-month video, that when I started carnivore, I really was much more still ketovore. I didn't want to admit that to myself, but the reality of it is part of the reason for that, it was a sunk cost issue that was going on in my own brain. I had just been to the grocery store. I had lots of chia and hemp seeds and nuts and berries and different superfoods that I thought were healthy, again, that were a big cause of my own chronic issues. So clean out your pantry, get rid of anything that might tempt or derail you. Then go shopping. Then go shopping and use that grocery list. The next thing you want to do is you want to prep 3 to 5 days of meals. First off, do a written plan. Do a written plan of the next 3 to 5 days. What are you going to eat? When are you going to eat? And what do you need to prep and prepare for ahead of time? Are you eating hard-boiled eggs? Great. Get 3 days or 5 days worth done ahead of time. Are you going to be making ground beef? Great. Make your hamburger patties ahead of time. Pre-cook them if you need to. Whatever you need to do that's going to get you on the fast track to success. If you're cooking a roast, get the slow cooker out, get it started, get it cooked, and then you can divide it up into containers and, set these up for Monday, this up for Tuesday, this up for Wednesday. So batch cooking, ground beef or steaks, slow cooking those roasts, all of those things that you can do for convenience and ease will really set you up for a much greater chance for success. And then again, have those easy proteins on hand. Hard-boiled eggs, burger patties, maybe some meat sticks or jerky or something along those lines. But again, I want to caution you to read those labels carefully so you don't derail yourself at the very beginning. Okay, the next area that we want to cover is meal frequency and satiety. Satiety. It's funny, in my interview with Bruce Langworthy, he said that he didn't really think he understood in the beginning what being hungry was. So I'm going to say this first. Eat only when you're hungry. And I mean truly hungry, not hungry in your brain. I'm talking hungry in your stomach where it's actually rumbling and you're feeling those digestive juices and maybe you're starting to get slightly weak or even slightly hangry. Don't let it get to a significant bad point, but eat when you're truly hungry, that your body is signaling that you're hungry. So stop clock watching to tell you when it's time to eat. I've recently moved my 92-year-old father in with me, and that was one of the things that he would do at the beginning. I would say, Dad, are you getting hungry for lunch? And he would say, well, what time is it? And I would always say, it doesn't matter what time it is. What I'm asking you is, are you hungry? And now 3 to 4 months into it, we've pretty much broke him of that. He doesn't really say anymore. He'll say, well, I don't really feel hungry, or yeah, I actually feel hungry. And that's a good sign for all of us. We've been conditioned through modern lifestyle that breakfast, lunch, and dinner is the way to eat. But again, I'm going to ask you, going back to our early ancestors, is that how they ate? No, they woke up in the morning thinking of their stomach. They had to go out and hunt and kill and gather to eat. And then they ate, and then they didn't eat again, typically, till they were hungry. They didn't look at the sun or, how it was going across the sky and go, oh my gosh, it's 5 o'clock or it's 6 o'clock. It's time to sit down as a family and eat dinner. I think that family community time is so important. I was raised with the family dinner table. I raised my children with the family dinner table, but there are a lot of things that you can do around that family dinner table that don't have to involve eating. You can play games. You can share stories. You can sit down and talk about your day. We can begin to condition ourselves to view that community and family time as something beyond just consuming a meal together. Now, most people, when they start eating carnivore, will begin to focus on 1 to 2 meals a day. This is common. But what I'm going to tell you is, especially in the beginning, don't try to rush into OMAD. You'll hear that, which is 1 meal a day. A lot of people, want to be that superstar, super stud, and they want to just all of a sudden go from eating snacks and ultra processed foods and all of that down to carnivore and just 1 meal a day. And that is often a recipe for disaster because your body is not ready for that. So don't try to rush into that or anything super complicated. If 3 meals a day is what you need to get started in this, stick to 3 meals a day. You will figure out your body's hunger signals, your satiety cues, and all of that, and you will evolve over time. But if you try to rush too quickly into a lot of that, you'll derail yourself and you'll think, this doesn't work, it's frustrating me, I feel more anxious, and I'm quitting. That's not what we want. Now, I am going to encourage you to cut out snacking. So if you're used to eating 3 meals a day and a snack or two, get rid of the 1 or 2 snacks first. If you're truly eating when hungry and you're eating to satiety, you won't need or want to snack. You just won't feel the urge for it. Fasting, whether it be intermittent or some longer 24, 48, 72-hour fast, fasting can come later. It'll come naturally, and if you choose to do it. My thought is you don't have to do that if you are eating ancestral and you are eating when you're hungry to satiety. Again, I think back and think our early ancestors were often forced to fast because they had a hard time with the hunting. They didn't get their kill. They didn't do whatever it was. And so there were probably periods of time that they went without eating. If you want to incorporate this in just to mix it up with your body and give it a break and confuse it a little bit, I say go for it. Just don't try to do it in the very beginning. Because remember, carnivore and animal-based eating is not about calorie counting. It's not about macros, at least not to begin with, and possibly never. You will begin to figure out your fat to protein ideal ratios, what works for you, by paying attention to how your body feels. Once you rid it of all the toxins and the ultra-processed foods and the excess snacking and that constant feeding of it where you've got insulin and glucose and all the things constantly rumbling through your body and never giving your body a break, you will find that you will figure it out. Your brain fog will clear, things will become logical and much more rational to you, and you'll figure out when to eat, how much to eat, and ideally, by what your body's telling you, your fat to protein ideal ratios. Remember, you absolutely do not need one single carb throughout your entire life. You don't need one single carbohydrate in order to live, survive, and thrive. It's simply a myth that we need that third macronutrient, those carbohydrates. And it's a lot of bad food marketing that we've been fed with headlines and journals and studies and all of that we've just chosen over time to believe because we felt that we could trust that all of those headlines and articles were in our best interest. The reality of it is many of them were not. This way of eating, this lifestyle is truly about nourishment and deep healing. Hey, Wellness Warrior, if you're even thinking about carnivore, you've got to get to Meatstock 2026 in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. The top doctors, experts, and real-life success stories all in one place. Incredible meals, amazing community, and conversations that will change your health journey, just like it did mine when I attended my first Steak and Butter Gang meetup in Montana. Use my referral code LTL to get $50 off any ticket package of your choice. Go to meatstockconvention.com. I'll be there, and I hope to see you there too. So drop a comment if you're attending, as we will be meeting up with the Lower Toxic Life Warriors. You can reach out to me also by going to peakperformancehabits.com/contact. All right, next up, let's talk about some benefits that you can expect. Well, fat loss, which is essentially, in some cases, the same as weight loss. Women, I'm really saying this to you, but men as well. Stop paying attention to the number on the scale and start paying attention to how you feel, what types of urges and cravings that you have in terms of food, and how your clothes fit on your body. Those are much more important than that number on the scale, because you've heard before, muscle, right, weighs more than fat. Now that's an odd way of looking at it, but actually a pound of fat and a pound of muscle are the same. They weigh the same. They just show up differently in our body composition. And unfortunately, we've taken to saying that in the wrong way. So while you might put on muscle mass, which ups the scale to where you weigh more, it could actually shrink and sculpt your body to look differently in a way that you're really going to like. So some of the benefits: fat loss, weight loss, blood sugar stability, having high energy without those crashes that sugar typically gives us, clear skin. Okay. I've talked in some of my other videos about some of the chronic issues and acne and rosacea and some of the skin issues that are common. Those begin to clear when we feed our body nutritionally dense quality foods. mental focus, getting rid of that brain fog, reduced inflammation in joints and tissues and a lot of that type stuff, our knees, our hips, our wrists, elbows, all of that. And then food freedom. The number one goal is to kick the sugar and carb addiction. So there's so much freedom that goes along with this style of eating because you don't have to constantly think about 3 meals a day or what it's going to be. Yes, you have to do some planning. Yes, especially in the beginning, you have to make sure you're on top of it so that you don't derail yourself. But over time, you will find the food freedom from the addictions, the cravings, the long time spent in the grocery store, the excess money that you're spending because you're sucked in by this new brand of potato chips and all of that. Those are some benefits. And that brings me to the thought of cost. A lot of times people say, wow, I can't afford that carnivore diet. Meat is expensive. It's so expensive. Here's what I'm going to tell you though. When you're not buying all those other products, expensive, sugary, gross cereals that are super expensive. I was spending a lot on nuts and seeds. Those are expensive. I was spending a lot on produce and often throwing it away or chopping it up and putting it in my freezer for a rainy day. I hear people say all the time the amount of money they're saving because of what they're not throwing away when they saw something in the grocery store and it sounded great and they bought it and then it went home and rotted in their refrigerator or on the counter or something like that. So you will begin to find in many cases that your grocery costs can often go down when you're not spending a lot of money on Uber Eats and eating out because they can't really get you what you need. You will begin to find that your food budget is less than what it was if you start factoring all those different things in. So I want to encourage you to do that as one of the tracking things, and we'll get to tracking. Now, thousands of people have reported improvements in all kinds of those chronic issues, including digestion, elimination, brain fog, mood swings, depression, PCOS, autoimmune issues, and more. So again, I ask, what if it works for you like it has for so many of these other people? All right, those are the benefits. Let's talk now about the detox symptoms and some of the adjustments that you may experience and that you may need to be aware of and to make. Common symptoms. We'll start with one of the most common and most talked about, and that is diarrhea, constipation, and grainy stools. Anytime you have a change of diet, it upsets your system and you will likely experience some elimination, changes, possibly issues. You are adapting your microbiome to a new way of eating. And you also have to incorporate fat adaptation. And especially if you've not been eating high quality fats, your microbiome, your digestive system, your elimination system, all of those have to adapt to the fat that you are taking in. Now, this is high quality fat, but it still requires your body to process and begin to work its way through accepting that and dealing with it. In my case, I've talked about the stored oxalate dumping. I had a lot of oxalate stored in my system. And so when I went hardcore carnivore to begin with, I threw my body into a panic. And you can watch my video here where I talk about my issues and my, very painful reality of what I did and how I would do things differently if I were starting over. I came from a very extreme keto-based diet with plenty of spinach and almond flour, almond butter, almonds, almond everything, cacao and dark chocolate, seeds and nuts. When I sat and really thought about my average daily diet, I ran the numbers and I was consuming anywhere from 2,000 to 3,000 milligrams of oxalates a day. The high end of what the human body is designed to process is 200. So I was 10xing and beyond that number. So my body couldn't process it, and it began storing these tiny sharp crystals known as oxalates in my tissues, joints, bones, and muscles. I was unaware that it was going on because in most research that you do on this, it shows up as kidney issues, kidney stones. I didn't have kidney stones. I don't have kidney stones. I don't have that issue. But when I thankfully stumbled upon Sally K. Norton in some of the previous videos she had done, I listened to her and I thought, oh my gosh, she is completely describing me and my symptoms. So keep that in mind and pay attention to what foods you may have been eating a lot of. Now, interestingly, it was the oxalate dumping that my body was starting to do as it gathered this overload of these tiny sharp crystals that started coming out in my eyes and in my skin and in my digestive, and kind of started showing up as irritable bowel syndrome, and not quite irritable bowel syndrome, but just irritation with, eliminating, and my brain fog and so many different things, a lot of which I was attributing to menopause. And I have my video right here where I relate those different issues and you can see for yourself. But that's what ultimately led me to carnivore, trying to figure out what was going on with my body. Now, another thing you may have heard of is the keto flu, which is often associated with keto, but also carnivore. And that can involve fatigue, headache, lethargy, just different symptoms. Again, as our body begins to adapt to the abrupt discontinuance of carbs and that energy that we get from carbs, we have to allow our body time to go into burning stored fat, which is a good thing. And that's what we want to do to generate the energy that we run on. But here's what I want to tell you. Keep going. This keto flu will pass. It's just your body adjusting. And it's so important that you give it that time and space to do that. Now, you may also experience muscle cramps. This is just usually a sign of needing salt and other electrolytes. Salt, magnesium, and potassium, those electrolytes that are so important. And I've got a video right here where I explain what the importance is of electrolytes and how to incorporate those in. It's short, so don't worry. And then cravings. That's another thing that you might experience. You might find that you start having massive cravings for those carbs, that sugar, those ultra-processed foods that you've given up. And that can be the hardest part, where we feel like we're truly white-knuckling it. But here's what I want to tell you. If you're doing everything else right, and I'll get to the solutions, it's going to be short-lived. Those cravings will be short-lived. So what are those solutions for these different symptoms? Well, first of all, eat to satiety. Eat to satiety at each and every meal. We've been conditioned to think of portion size, and I want you to, at the beginning, take a bigger portion size than you think you might eat and consume everything on that plate until you're satiated. The idea of satiation means when you can't possibly take one more bite because it almost tastes like cardboard, that's when your body is full and satiated, and that's the time to stop eating. Again, let go of those social norms and mores that say, that you should only eat this much protein and, a half a cup of this or whatever. Throw all of that out the window and just begin to fill up your plate. You can always put it in the fridge if you don't eat it, but just see how your body processes all of that. And then, of course, make sure you're getting electrolytes daily. I mentioned that already. Sodium, magnesium, and potassium. It's so important that we consume those, because I know for me, as my body was going into oxalate dumping, it was drawing on those stored minerals. It was drawing a lot of that to clean out and detox my body. As you clean out and detox your body from whatever it is, whether it's oxalates, whether it's, a lot of ultra processed foods and different things, excess weight, excess fat, all of that, you want to make sure that you are hydrating your body with plenty of water, and in that water, have those electrolytes. And then bone broth is another good solution for a lot of these symptoms. Just sip on some bone broth. Keep your meals simple. Don't try to overthink a lot of really high-end, or not even high-end, but like complicated meals, because there's a lot that you can do. I know that for a lot of people, when they first think about it, it's like, it seems so abrupt. You're just going to eat meat and maybe some dairy and eggs and that type thing. But as you begin to experiment, incorporate maybe 4 types of meat into your meal, so that you're having shrimp and bacon over your steak or something along those lines, you will find that that begins to add more variety and makes things more pleasant if that's something you struggle with. But in the beginning, keep those meals very simple. And that's where it's so important to do that meal prep, so you have that to fall back on. And then remember, just write it out. Healing is happening even if it's behind the scenes. The issues in your tissues are beginning to repair themselves. And that often happens behind the scenes in ways that we can't actually see in the beginning. All right, next up, let's talk about fasting and workouts. Now, I already talked about fasting, but I want to really reiterate that point. Wait to start fasting. Let your body adjust to everything that it's adjusting to, eliminating those carbs, getting rid of the sugar and carb addiction, cutting out ultra processed foods, cutting out snacking, maybe cutting out one complete meal a day if you're just going to focus on 2 meals a day. Give your body time, allow it to adjust, and you'll know by how your body feels when it's ready to try fasting. And really, for most of us, we start that intermittent fasting process when we go to 2 meals a day. So for me, right now, I've done different things, but for me, right now, I'm eating a big breakfast. Probably my biggest meal of the day is breakfast at 8 in the morning. And then I like to be done with my second meal, but between 3 and 5, and ideally 4. 4 is what I shoot for. Occasionally there are social things and I blow that. Sometimes I go to social events and I don't even eat. I just drink electrolyte water or something like that, or coconut water. And I'm totally fine with that. I've learned to get past my fear of other people's opinions, what they're going to say. I don't have any problem explaining what I'm doing, why I'm doing, how it's healing my body. I don't preach to people or tell them they should be doing this, or their way of eating is wrong, or eating at 7 o'clock at night is bad for you. I don't get into any of that. I just simply state what's going on for me and why I'm doing this. And I'm very kind and light and firm about it. Fasting becomes natural when you begin to reprogram to eat only when you're hungry. So that's what I was going to say. So if my last meal is at 4 and then I don't eat again until 8 the next morning, that is a 16-hour window. So 16 hours of the day, my body is resting. I'm not snacking. I'm not taking in calories. I'm not doing any of that. Occasionally, I may sip on some bone broth if something's going on that does have some calories. It has a little protein and some natural good fat in it, but I don't do that on a regular occasion. Usually if I'm having bone broth, it's in the morning around the time that I start my 8 a.m. breakfast, or maybe throughout the day or something, but it's very, very random. But you'll begin to know and you'll reprogram to eat only when you're hungry. And that is what truly gives your digestive and other systems in your body a chance to rest and heal and repair itself. Now let's talk about workouts, walking, lifting weights, strength training, stretching, rucking, if you've involved that at all, lifting. Those are so important. It's really important because not only are we looking to heal and repair our body, but we also want to keep our body functional and moving. And that's where walking out in nature is so good for you. Lifting your own body weight, push-ups, or tricep dips and stuff where you're strictly using your own body weight as resistance. That's important. And then certainly lifting and strength training with dumbbells and bands and that type thing, and then stretching. There's so many good things that you can do for your body to support it in this healing process. Carnivore way of eating fuels muscle retention and recovery. So it's really, a great part of it. The fasting process will come, the eating to satiety and filling your body with that nutrient dense food lends us to be more prone to want to work out, to want to, sculpt and carve and shape our body in the way that we desire, because that carnivore way of eating, again, fuels muscle retention and recovery. Remember, this isn't about starving, you're nourishing your body. All right, next up, tracking and evaluation. I like to recommend doing 30, 60, and 90-day checkpoints. And certainly you can do some weekly things in between. So depending on your goals, you may want to start by measuring what matters. Measure what matters. Your chest measurements, waist, hips, thighs, your weight. All of these are optional and they don't have to be done, okay? But also some things that you may want to measure are your energy, your moods, your sleep habits. How well are you sleeping? How many hours? What time do you go to sleep? What time do you wake up? How many times do you get up in the night to go to the bathroom? I know oxalate dumping can be a huge part of that process. And especially, men who are older with maybe some prostate issues, a lot of that has to do with oxalates. And a lot of people begin to experience maybe no nighttime trips to the bathroom, or maybe only one, or reducing that down. So begin to track your elimination, your bowel movements, any oddities that you find that go along with that. It may seem crazy in the beginning, but trust me, you will love this part of your journey if you take the time to track all of this, because it will make it so worthwhile to look back when you maybe hit a plateau, to look and see, oh, I'm in a plateau now, but look at what I did here. And here was another plateau. And then look at how I kept going and that type thing. And then your skin, do you have skin issues? Do you have joint issues? How's your anxiety? Do you experience depression? Are your cravings gone? Okay, these are all great things to track. And then I mentioned tracking money. So you may look back, if it's possible for you, look back at how much you spent in the month or 2 months, 30, 60, 90 days leading up to this journey. How much did you spend eating out? How much did you spend on Uber Eats or DoorDash or bringing food in? And then how much did you spend at the grocery store? And tally all of that up into a monthly amount, and then begin to track your grocery expenditures and all of your food expenditures as you progress along this journey. And I would love for you to drop a comment below and let me know what you're currently spending, what you think is going to happen, or perhaps you've been doing this for a while. Let me know what rings true for you. And then keep a journal, okay? It's an easy place to track all of these numbers is in a journal. You can call it your carnivore journey, right? In your journal. You can take photos if you want, but truly trust the process. If you have a lot of weight to lose, I really encourage you to take photos so that you can not only share those before and after with other people, but also just for yourself, so that you can always pat yourself on the back and remind yourself how far you've come. All right, I want to talk now about why calorie restriction fails. And if you've tried other forms of dieting, you already know this. That crazy BS of calories in, calories out, eat less, move more. If that were really, truly as simple as it is, everybody would be skinny on the beach, right? But it doesn't work that way. Deprivation is never the answer to cure your long time challenge, whether it's weight or sugar and carb addictions, whatever. Because deprivation immediately creates resistance. We're white knuckling. It creates resistance and an outcry from the body saying no. Now, I get it. Depriving your body of carbs and sugar and ultra processed foods is different. That's purely a health issue more than anything. And so it's not the same as counting calories or starving yourself from calories. I've said already, eat when you're hungry, eat to satiety. Nobody's telling you how much food to put on a plate or any of that, other than eat until you can't possibly take another bite. That's it, okay? You aren't starving yourself in any way, shape, or form. So it's important that we throw out those norms and standards of, how much should go on the plate that I already mentioned. Calorie restriction truly does slow your metabolism. That's not what we want to do here. We're not trying to slow our metabolism. What we want our metabolism to do, and the way our body thrives and processes things, is we want it to start utilizing stored fat, right? Instead of these carbs and that instant glucose and energy that we're putting into it in the form of carbohydrates. Okay, we want it to burn from that stored fat. Calorie restriction will slow metabolism. And calorie restriction never heals the root issue. It just can create more, at least in the mind first. Carnivore is all about abundance of nutrients and that sense of satiated fullness. And that's why we say, eat to satiety. It's not about starvation. So remember, this is not a diet. It's a return to how humans evolved to eat. If you're ready to break free from those toxic food cycles, those carb and sugar addictions, everything that's gone on, hit that subscribe button. Join me on the journey to a lower toxic life. Grab the guide with the grocery list at lowertoxiclife.com. And then drop me a comment with questions and what resonates most with you. I've got a playlist here on my carnivore journey and other tips and ideas that might make a difference for you. I'm Jackie Elmer. Thanks for watching and spending this time with me today.